1, 2, check, check. Give me a thumbs up when you can hear it. Check. Yeah, no, yes, yes.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the September 12, 2023 meeting of the Milton Select Board. Before we begin, please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the September 12, 2023 meeting of the Milton Select Board.
We got it.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for that. Before we move to item 3, yesterday marked the 22nd anniversary of September 11th, 2001, when terrorists linked to the Islamic extremist group Al-Qaeda hijacked 4 commercial passenger airplanes and carried out suicide attacks against targets in the United States. 2 of the planes were flown into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York City. Within hours, both of the Twin Towers collapsed in rubble, demolishing a large section of Lower Manhattan. A 3rd plane hit the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia, just outside Washington, D.C. The passengers and crew of the 4th plane fought back, and the plane was downed in a field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Nearly 3,000 people were killed, including 400 police officers and firefighters, and more than 6,000 were injured in the worst attack against the homeland in our nation's history. It is a moment that can never be forgotten. Please join us as we take a moment of silence to honor the memories of those who lost their lives and to remember the sacrifices of the first responders and the suffering of the families and friends of those who perished in New York City, Arlington, Virginia, and Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Thank you for that. Item 3 is public comment. Public comment we allow by policy, recently revised policy, 3 minutes, up to 3 minutes per person, and up to 21 minutes of our meeting for public comment. And we will alternate between those in person and those online. I would ask you to try to keep your time to 3 minutes. I'll give you an indication when you're at 2 minutes and 30 seconds. And if you give your name and your address to us, and then go on and have your say. So, is there anyone? We'll start in person. And actually, Mr. Milano will time the 21 minutes, and I will do my very best to time the 3 minutes. So, do we have anyone in person for public comment? Please come up, Carolyn. If you could sign in, Carolyn, that'd be great too.
Great. My name is Carolyn Cahill. I live at 40 Essex Road here in Milton. I just want to take a moment and thank the Select Board for all the work that you guys do for our town of Milton. I'm here tonight to speak in favor of the MBTA zoning bill. I'm a real estate agent in Milton and have been for almost 20 years. As of today, our average sales price for a single-family home per MLS is $1.1 million. The median home sales is $925,000. $925,000 in Milton right now will buy you a 4-bedroom house, 1 full bath, and approximately 1,500 square feet. A $1.1 million home will buy you 3 bedrooms, 1.5 bathrooms, and approximately 2,000 square feet. This past week, a new condo conversion came on the market on Antwerp Street. It was listed for $729,000. That's $729,000. This was 3 bedrooms, 2 full bathrooms, and 1,700 square feet. Completely renovated, all new systems, and only had 1 deeded parking spot. After a weekend of open houses, the property is pending. There is another 2/3 family condo on Thatcher Street. That is a 2-bedroom, 1 full bath, approximately 1,100 square feet. That just came on the market for $549,000. These condo alternatives are a more affordable option for future generations who want to live in Milton. For those of us who own property in town, how lucky are we that we live in a community so close to Boston and have reaped the benefits of home ownership. My hope is our residents and elected officials can work together and find a way to comply with MBTA zoning, with the MBTA zoning bill, and determine what works best for Milton. We need more housing options here in town. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cahill. Do we have anyone online for citizen speak? Seeing none at this time, is there anyone else in person for citizen speak, for public comment? Seeing none, none in person, and I'll give one more chance for people online to raise their hand or to indicate in some way. And I don't see anything, Mr. Milano.
Agreed.
All right, so thank you for that. We will go to item 4, which is discussion approval of a sewer bond issuance for the Massachusetts Water Resources Authority, and I think we have our duly elected treasurer with us tonight, and perhaps Mr. Milano will have our treasurer join us. Is that the plan?
Sure, come on.
Always helpful to have our treasurer here for a sewer bond issuance.
Would you like me to sign in?
No. When you're elected, you don't have to sign in. You just go wherever you want.
I told Nick that I'll be here on deck, so.
Okay. All right. So Nick, do you want to, Mr. Milano, do you want to tee this up, or?
Sure. This is following through on a December 2022 town meeting vote to authorize $1,150,000 in sewer capital projects. Because we are in the MWRA program and a member of the MWRA, we have access to capital funding through the MWRA. So of that $1,150,000, 75% of it is granted to the town, and 25% is a 10-year no-interest loan. So $862,500 in grant money, $287,000, $500, and a 0% loan payable over 10 years back to the MWRA. This issuance, if approved tonight, will fund infiltration and inflow projects in town, which is it's a preventative program to stop rainwater from leaking into sewer pipes, which then go out to Deer Island, and we pay to have that treated. So if we're able to reduce what gets into our pipes, we're able to reduce our costs overall. This project is in the design phase, expected to go out to bid later this fall. And the MWRA, as we discussed, will be paying the lion's share of the cost here.
Comments or questions from, anything from our
No, I
treasurer?
don't have anything to add. That was a good summary. I mean, as Nick said, it's or Mr. Milano said, it's a 0% interest, and it's payable over 10 years. So, and it's the actual amount we're borrowing is less than $300,000.
Comments or questions from members? Mr. Zoll.
You got it. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be voting in favor of this. I just feel like we should acknowledge that this summer has been one of the wettest summers in our history. And knowing what we know about climate change, I think we can anticipate more extreme weather events going forward. Many of us were watching Hurricane So to me, it makes a lot of sense to be investing in this kind of infrastructure, particularly in the long run if it saves us money by reducing our the amount of water that's going into sewage treatment. So it seems like a pretty straightforward vote. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Other comments or questions? So the proposed vote is comprised of two elements. One is the vote on the number, and one is the authorization to sign. So it's probably a good idea to read it quickly. I thought I saw you raise your hand.
No, sorry.
So I'll make the motion I'll move that the sale of 287,500 sewer bonds of the town dated September 18, 2023 to the Massachusetts Water Resources Authority is hereby approved, and the town treasurer or other appropriate town official is authorized to execute on behalf of the town a loan agreement and financial assistance agreement with the MWRA with respect to the bond. The bond shall be payable without interest on August 15th of the years and in the principal amounts as follows. And it sets forth for each year 2024 through 2028 an installment of $28,750. And actually it's for each year from 2024 through 2033 installments of $28,750. And the further vote is that each member of the Select Board, the Town Clerk, and the Town Treasurer be and hereby are authorized to take any and all such actions and execute and deliver such certificates and receipts or other documents as may be determined by them or any of them to be necessary, convenient to carry into effect the provisions of the foregoing vote.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. I will just observe there's a reference to the 287,000. And do we need the reference to the approximately 800,000 as well? Or
No, this is just an agreement for what we're borrowing.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Milano. All right, motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, there'll be a roll call vote. Ms. Bradley.
Yes.
Ms. Musto.
Yes.
Mr. Wells.
Yes.
Mr. Zoll.
Yes.
And Mr. Zoll is yes. I think that's it. Thank you.
That's
to
it. We
our-
just need your signature, but yes.
Now, do you need it tonight?
That would be great. I do think Lynn has the papers, so
So
at some point this
after the
evening.
meeting, is that okay?
Absolutely,
All
yes.
right.
Thank you so
We'll-
much.
We'll sign it after the meeting, and you'll have it in the morning, first
Awesome,
thing.
great, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item 5 is discussion approval of a letter, this is a follow-up item, letter from Town Council to the Massachusetts Department of Transportation regarding the proposed project at Randolph Ave and Chickatavic Road. And why don't we ask our Town Council, Mr. Mello, to join us. And this is a follow-on item, but I believe Mr. Milano has some updated information from the Massachusetts Department of Transportation with respect to this project. So why don't we go first to Mr. Milano?
Sure, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. I had a conversation with DPW Director Chase Berkeley today, who had some updates from Mass DOT regarding this project. I know one of their most recent letter to the town referenced a September advertisement date, but our understanding is that the advertisement date has been pushed back to the end of this calendar year. We also did ask about the MEPA environmental review process. They have indicated to the town that that process has not commenced yet and that they have not filed their environmental notification form, which begins that process. So I wanted to make sure that the board understood that while there had been a reference to a September advertisement date, that has been pushed back at this time. And as we get into the letter, I think one place to add a request here would be to request formally an update on the schedule. We don't have anything official from Mass DOT to this effect, and we haven't had a schedule previously. So that's one suggestion I'd make once we get to talking about the letter here, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Milano. Mr. Mello, do you have anything to add at this point?
No, I think that summarizes it well.
Comments or questions from the members? Mr. Zoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Given that that's the case, I just wonder if our council we have the September 18th deadline for a response in the letter. I'm assuming that we wanted a really quick turnaround because we were expecting that the project went out in September, and it might be a little more reasonable since we have a lot of things we're asking them for, which I think we should be asking them for, but maybe to give them another, I don't know, another week of time.
Sure.
What would your advice be there?
Yeah, that's reasonable. I think that's appropriate.
Okay.
25th.
I might suggest then an edit then that we amend the letter to, on the very last paragraph, instead of Monday, September 18th, 2023, to Monday, September 25, 2023.
Yeah, and bear in mind, the ask there is that they respond with their availability as opposed to providing the information, but I think that it's, regardless, it's a pretty abrupt turnaround, so I think that that's appropriate to give them another week.
Okay.
Other comments or questions? Mrs. Musto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I thought the letter was quite good. I want to make sure that we're knowing that this is getting pushed off a little bit, that we really push for an on-site meeting instead of anything less than that, because they had promised that, and I know it's mentioned in here, but they had promised that quite some time ago. Since the last meeting that we had with regards to this, a few people emailed me or called me, and these are some of the points that I believe are in this letter already, but things such as, how would traffic safety be looked at, the entire corridor, like any changes, and how would that affect cut-through traffic on some of our Milton side streets like Hillside, and how would people be able to get out? So those are all, we've mentioned these before. One person was very concerned about the eminent domain that they are taking of some land. This particular person was somebody who would be affected by that. They had a lot of concern about that. Lack of comprehensive safety beyond the intersection. These are things we've all talked about. Also, looking at a unified front from all of us and our delegation. So I'm just wondering, when we send this letter, who else are we sending it to? Who are we CCing on this letter? Because I think it should be our delegation, as well as anyone that we think that could be helpful on this at the state level. So I just want to make sure that we CC all of those people.
So we would typically CC the delegation, and in this case, Mr. O'Dowd was sending it on behalf of the secretary, on behalf of the supervisor of highways, I think is his title, and on behalf of the governor. So perhaps we CC all of those people as well.
So it will go right to the governor as well?
If we
I
CC,
think
yeah.
it should at
Yeah.
this point, because some of these responses have been
Yeah.
lacking a little bit. I think you had mentioned this in here about, I know they may or may not have to let us know, but some of the data from those other alternatives they looked at, and really press for them to really, we talked about those dedicated left-hand turn signalized lanes that, especially if things are going to be studied and be pushed out, that we absolutely need that for safety. So, thank you.
Ms. Bradley.
Thanks so much, Mr. Chair.
Oh, Mr. Wells, and then Mr. Wells. Go ahead, Ms. Bradley.
Sorry. Mine's real quick. I thought that at our last meeting we had talked about reaching out to the other towns that access that. So if we were to CC, I was just piggybacking off of that. If we were to send this, I'm wondering if we could maybe talk, if Nick or somebody could talk to the other towns that access that road, specifically Randolph, and see if they'd like to, or maybe we CC them, however that works.
So we could CC the town manager and the head of the town council. I can't remember what the title of the head of the town council there is. I don't know if they call it the president.
Probably
They might
council
call it the
president,
president.
yeah.
Yeah, president of the town council. Very lofty title, but.
It is.
So we can certainly CC, and then maybe we CC it, and then CC them, and then Nick follows it up with a conversation.
Perfect.
Sure.
I just don't want to leave them out since they are going to be impacted by that.
That's a good point.
I think Mr. Wells had one of them.
Yes, Mr. Wells.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to reiterate a couple of things that, how we got to this point. I mean, fortunately, being a senior member, I had opportunity to be here when they first introduced this, to actually go to District 6 on multiple occasions, to meet with Howard Stein Hudson, and I believe, like you, to take a couple of tours, including one with the secretary. But one of the important things that perhaps we should start to list some of this on the website is when you look at how, not just MassDOT, but how roundabouts are taking shape in this country, you can easily find loads of documentation from everyone from AAA to AARP to the American Institute of Insurance Agencies to some of the crash data institutes as to how they came to this conclusion in this case. I know that when I speak of this, it's not popular and it's easy to think, oh no, but when you look at things relative, and I like Ms. Musto received several emails the past few days and I answered them today. When you look at the effect of them on safety, the ease of congestion, the reduction of pollution from idling cars at red lights, the decrease in overflow traffic into abutting neighborhoods, you can see why the use of roundabouts has become such a common practice in situations just as this. I've said this several times before, but I want to reiterate it again tonight because I went back and reviewed some of the data that our former colleague, a couple of the articles that our former colleague, Ms. Collins, who actually lives in that one of the neighborhoods affected by this, brought forward a few years ago. And I just don't want residents to think that MassDOT just came up with this idea. They did look at, they had the benefit of all the crash data, the black box data, the volume data. They did multiple speed strip counts. They did a lot. And much like the newer members here, I was shocked when I first heard it, but I've come to understand it. And that's why I'm not as against it as others are, because I believe in the long run, this will absolutely have a positive impact on not just 28, the communities feeding it, the neighborhoods abutting it, but the overall congestion and especially and most importantly, reduction of severe bodily injury and fatal motor vehicle accidents at that intersection. So that's just my thoughts on this. Thank you.
Ms. Musto and then Mr. Zoll.
Thank you. A couple of comments. The roundabouts, I would say, are probably not a one-size-fits-all. I'm hearing what Mr. Wells is saying, and I do appreciate that. You know, we've had 1,800 residents that have come out, our Milton residents, that are opposed to this solution. We don't have the data on the other alternatives. Their own study showed longer queue times on Chickatawbut trying to get in there. And I will say that within the past week or two on the news, there was a rotary in Somerset, where 2 people died going in the wrong way on one of those. Not a roundabout, but a rotary, similar. But, you know, so there were fatalities recently. Thank you.
Mr. Zoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just a quick, more of a point, I think, as we send this letter to keep in mind. I hear what Mr. Wells is saying, and I have expressed, I think, at times my own opinion that I think, you know, in terms of the very specific intersection, I think it's very likely that a rotary or a roundabout makes the most sense. But what I have been concerned about is the lack of information about what the placing the rotary will do with the downstream traffic further along 28 as we get into Milton, if you're thinking of traffic flowing into Milton. And when we had the DOT here, I believe it was June 27th, I had asked the question about a study that was underway looking at the effects of this on the corridor. I think that the answer to that was, you know, I think it's like a year-long study, and so they felt like with the September deadline that they wouldn't have really any data from that to be able to inform the process. Which I asked the question, then why are we moving forward with the process without the data? But I would suspect that by December, if they're putting this out to bid, that they will have more data that they've collected, because I think, for me, the real concern is we're playing a whack-a-mole game here, where we're going to push down the accidents at that intersection, but we're going to create them further down, where you have families that are going to be trying to pull out on the side streets onto 28. I think that's the real danger there, and those families, the light actually provides some break in the traffic so that they can pull out, and without that break in the traffic, it's going to force people into decisions that they may not want to be making. So I think that we should this is just to say that I think we should be keeping this in our pocket as we send this letter out, in that we can revisit that point, that it would be one of the things I would really want to see is some progress on that study if this thing is going out in December before the December date. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Zoll, other comments? I will add, with respect to the interim solutions that we've talked about, and that including activating the left-hand turn signals that actually are there, and that we had a resident last week who came in and said that that it was activated. I actually have been through it, and I know some other people have been through it this week, and it wasn't activated at certain times. So it may be activated at certain times and not activated at other times. Certainly the DOT, according to their letter, they don't think it's activated. So perhaps we can get some clarity on that, and if it's activated and it's on sometimes, maybe we, certainly as an interim solution, get them to ask them to turn it on all the time, so that there's perhaps some safety advantage there. So, and in terms of moving forward with the letter, so we've talked about amending the date to September 25th, and we talked about requesting an update on the schedule. So do we want to move forward and authorize the letter subject to the revision on the date and subject to town council including a requested update on the schedule?
And CCs.
And the CCs that I think you have.
Yeah.
What about the point you just raised with respect to the left turn signal and the
Isn't it in
uncertainty about?
Well, we have, you did mention the interim
Okay.
solutions.
Yeah,
So,
you did.
I think,
Yeah.
it would
It's the
help if
first
we could have a
one.
conversation with people at DOT
Well-
about what exactly they're doing.
Just to clarify, I mentioned in bullet 1 the need for data concerning its analysis of the
Right.
left turn signal, but the apparent, or the confusion that seems to exist about whether or not the signal is currently activated. You
like a
just
1A.
pointed out that someone had mentioned last week that they had observed that the signal was operating.
Right.
And DOT had indicated in prior correspondence that it wasn't. So do you want me to raise that question, or?
So on point 7 is where you're talking about the mitigation, the short-term mitigation. So perhaps if the members want something there with respect to that, we could include it there. Does that
Yeah,
make
that's,
sense?
Sure.
Mr. Chair, are you making that motion?
So I'll make a motion to authorize town council to send this letter on behalf of the board with the updates and the suggestions that we made.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Ms. Musto?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Zoll?
Yes.
And Mr. Zulish, yes. Thank you, Mr. Mello.
Thank you.
All right. Item 6 is discussion update, approval animal shelter project located at the dump access road, contract with Access Construction. And I think we have Mr. Milano for an update on this.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. The Animal Shelter Advisory Committee met last week on Friday to discuss the project, and they scheduled another meeting for tomorrow at, I believe, noon. I could be wrong on that, but they are meeting tomorrow to pick up their conversation on the project. Access Construction was asked to go back and take a look at their numbers, see if there was anything they could do on their price. As I think I've mentioned previously, they have come down on their ledge price, which was in there at about $720 a cubic yard for a ledge. They've come down just about right in half on that price proposal. Right now, as things stand, my understanding is the total project cost is about $4.1 million, with total available and committed funds close to just over $4 million. But we're looking through that with the Animal Shelter Advisory Committee to confirm that and seeking their recommendation on the project, which if they make it tomorrow, we can bring that to the select board as soon as the board is interested to hear their recommendation on that project. Our goal was to have, if the project budget was met, to have a contract approved as soon as possible so that Access knew that things are moving forward. They have been receptive and willing partners in our attempts to get them to work on their pricing.
Comments or questions from the members? Ms. Musto?
Thank you. Mr. Milano, where are we in regards to looking at the other site where it is presently located?
This board has reviewed and discussed the business plan that was put together by Milton Animal League, looked at by the Animal Shelter Advisory Committee. The main thrust of what's left is for that business plan is a good hard number on the value of that property. That was the main sticking point of the Attorney General's Public Charities Division when we discussed it with them. So we've been working with the assessor to look at comparable land and land value in Milton, and that's what we continue to work on. And the other piece of that is where the Animal League had talked about a potential lease, and nailing down what a fair market value of a lease would be is the other challenge that remains on that, looking at that site. In terms of just going back to the Attorney General's with that division, Public Charities Division, with that information, if the trustees requested that we do so.
Mr. Wells.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if the advisory committee were to try and recommend this to us, they have no contingency money, zero. Even if they had enough at 4.1, if they could scrape every nickel that they have, or possibly have, because it's not all committed yet, what would they do? Because that's the difficulty. There's no additional donor money. There's no additional town money. They have no additional money. As you know, you and I discussed this last week. The fire station, just headquarters alone, I think it came in as what we projected it at, I think it was 17 or 18 million. It's in the 20s, several million over. Fortunately, the passage of the town meeting article allowed for that contingency. What would you do here? Because I just don't know how you could. They may wind up putting the town in a box or the animal shelter in a box because they authorize a contract when they have not enough money or barely enough money and no money at all for contingency. That's a serious concern.
Mr. Milano,
Sure.
is there contingency in that $4.1 million figure?
So the figure that we are still working on with the owner's project manager includes, of the $4.1 million in total project costs that I mentioned, it includes a $65,000 construction contingency. And I should mention the ledge is broken out in two ways. First, $250,000 in an expected/anticipated ledge, and an additional ledge contingency if it's absolutely everything that the geotech report suggests would be about, I believe it's 1,600 cubic yards, and at the price that they've given would be $528,000. And all of that is included in the budget right now. So $528,000 total for a ledge, hoping that the ledge number actually is less than that in reality. In addition, there is a construction contingency of $65,000. But your point is correct at this point, based on what we have available and committed versus the total project costs with those contingencies cooked in. There's still a deficiency at this time in funding available, and something I'm sure that will be discussed at the advisory committee meeting tomorrow.
Other comments, questions? Ms. Bradley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I had an opportunity to look through this, and I've had an opportunity of being in on many of the calls regarding the animal shelter. Where I stand and where I've always stood is that I want it done as soon as possible. I would like this off our books. I would like this off our records. And I would like to move on to other projects that we can do for our town. In looking at the deficiency, which is approximately $136,000, if we don't have that $65K, that is the, I'm not really sure what you call the construction contingency. Thank you, contingency. Then we're only looking at about a $70,000, another 65.
Yeah,
65,
just
70?
so there's clarity. There has been a reduction in Axis's proposed costs. So the delta right now is $70,000, of which $65,000 is a construction contingency.
Okay.
In addition, there's also included $20,000 for soft cost contingency if there's a change order on X, maybe it might result in a change order for engineering services. So they sometimes run in parallel.
Okay, so is this for, if I may, Mr. Chair, is this for this budget cycle year, or is this for FY, give me a second, 25?
The project would span both fiscal 24 and fiscal 25.
So if this deficit can't be made up, we're looking at the town to make up the deficit both in 24 and 25?
Most likely it would be at the end of the project, so
End
it
of the
would
project, great, that's good
arise
to
in
know.
25.
So it'd be more closer to the FY '25 budget. Okay, and my last thing, if I may, Mr. Chair. I know that when Ms. McKettrick came and spoke about this, she had talked about having an independent consultant, auditor, CPA, somebody that was coming to look at the Milton Animal League's books to ensure that everything was copacetic, as we had heard from other folks in public meeting that there was concerns. I would just like to ask that we have a, whether it's an executive summary or something from somebody before we enter into a contract with a third party, with the Milton Animal League being one of the main primary payors of this. I'd like to make sure that we have something in writing that says that everything is copacetic. It's just a protection for not only the town, but for them, and just let's make sure everything is the way it's supposed to be and that there's no rumors or anything else that's happening. So if that can be made available before we sign any contracts or do anything further, I would greatly appreciate it. I won't be able to be at the meeting tomorrow because I will unfortunately be in class about income tax, funny enough. So if you could, or Tim or somebody could just let them know that this is something that I personally would like to see before I feel comfortable signing off on something, that would be great.
Sure, if I could
Mr.
just,
Milano.
so one component of this obviously will be, as you speak to, is knowing that the money is there.
Right.
And funds have been committed by both the Copeland Foundation and the Milton Animal League.
Yep.
And what I have spoken with Attorney McKettrick about is memorializing those informal agreements with, that are enforceable. That is, my understanding, that's Copeland's preference that they've made known to the Animal League previously, is that they would like an agreement with the town in Copeland, and this is something that Copeland and the town had entered into during the school projects some 20 years ago. And in talking with the Animal League, that is something they would be open to as well. So that would be in work for both groups, not just the Animal League.
And just to clarify, fair to say, Mr. Milano, so we have a $65,000 construction contingency, we have a $20,000 soft cost contingency, and we have a $287,000 ledge contingency. Is that
Correct,
what's included in the budget?
280, yep.
$280,000 ledge contingency. So that gives us about a $365,000 contingency for this, and that's included in the budget, for which we're about $65,000 to the $65,000 that needs to be made out. Mr. Wells.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, on a $4 million project, $65,000 contingency is not very much. And what happens when the first change order comes across is we saw in the school projects, we saw it in the fire station projects, we saw it in the library project, and there's no money to pay it. And the second thing that the board needs to be aware of is that there is an MOA that was voted on and signed by both Select Board and the Milton Animal League at the beginning of this, that there'd be no town funds spent. The one concession to that was the $700,000 capital addition 2 years ago, because this had just gone on so long. So I believe that if they come looking to the town, I think they know if they want an MOA, there are no additional town funds for them to receive here.
So two things. One is, certainly if the town wanted to commit more funds, if it needed to, it could do so. It did with the $700,000, it could do so again. Mr. Milano.
We don't own it,
Mr.
Michael.
Milano?
We don't own it. So let's say, hypothetically,
I-
this is approved, and they're in the multi, as Mr. Milano knows, he's heard it, anyone who goes, listens to their meetings, the $1 million question in this continuously has been the ledge and the uncertainty of it, how deep it is. Other proposals we've seen have been so high specifically because of it. This proposal initially omitted it completely. What happens if you award this and it's May or June or whatever, and the ledger's beyond there, and let's say they come in with a $200,000 change order, what do we do? It's not our building. We don't own it.
Well, that
We
would
don't
be
own it.
fine, because this.
We own the land.
Sorry.
We don't own the building.
That would be fine, because there's a $287,000 ledge contingency, so in that hypothetical, that would be fine. But Mr. Milano, can you talk about the analysis that led to the contingencies that have been developed?
Yes, that is on recommendation of the owner's project manager, who will certainly be here when this board takes it up, and I can go back to him with some follow-up questions as I'm hearing tonight. He said typical contingency on a normal construction project might be 5%. He finds that their jobs usually come around 2%, and that this is design build, and that it's modular construction. His recommendation figure was about 2.5%, resulting in the $65,000 figure that's been included to date.
Other comments or questions? All right, so the advisory committee may give us a recommendation tomorrow. So maybe the question for this board, well, Mr. Milano, do we have can you tell the board what the timeline for construction would be after we sign a contract?
They would move right into, I believe site work would start, they would shoot to start site work and be done before the winter truly has hit us. So I think they were start looking to mobilize in November and be out of there within 6 to 8 weeks in terms of site work. So, but there's plenty of work to be done before then. And as soon as we have a contract, everybody can get going on that schedule. So I believe the schedule had pegged in contract approval in the month of September. I don't believe there was a firm date on that.
And what would be the completion date under that timeline?
Project closeout would be September of 2025.
All right, so we're talking about another 2024 or 2025?
I'm sorry, 24.
All right,
Yes,
so we're
thank
talking
you.
about another year if we approve the contract this month. So I guess the question for the board is, the advisory committee is going to be meeting, may give us a recommendation tomorrow. We have a Governor Stoughton meeting scheduled for next Tuesday. We have a select board meeting scheduled for the 26th. I guess the question is, well, I'll tell you, given the fact that this has been pending for years, I would want to move along as quickly as possible, one way or the other, if we get a recommendation from the advisory committee. So we could add this to next Tuesday. We could have a select board meeting perhaps after our Governor Stoughton public hearing, which should go, an hour and a half, 2 hours. We could add that as well. Mr. Zoll.
Mr. Chair, selfishly, that would be my preference, as I will be out of the country on the 26th, which I've flagged earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I, spent some time around the animal shelter. I feel pretty strongly about this, so I'd like to participate in it. So if we could do that, otherwise, I might ask that we postpone it until I return.
Mm-hmm. It seems like there is some time sensitivity. Ms. Musto.
Thank you. I would suggest that we not do it the same night that we're doing the Governor Stoughton meeting. I know we're allotting a certain amount of time, but sometimes those meetings do run longer than that. And the other thing is, I would like to know from Mr. Milano, if my understanding was that we were sort of looking at the two options sort of simultaneously. And so I would like to see if we can do a little more forward motion on the other end of things too, because anybody who does construction or is in that business knows there's always cost overruns. And you're talking about a market where prices change all the time. So I think that, to Mr. Wells's point, it could come in. I know what they're telling you for numbers, but every project we've ever done has always been over, and pretty significantly. Ledge is something can be very expensive. And even if they have this contingency, it could still be a lot more than we think. And I would like to make sure that we're also looking at that other option. I really strongly suggest we don't do it the same night as we do the Governor Stoughton meeting.
All right, well, I mean, we could put it on and see how long the Governor Stoughton meetings, we could always defer it that night. I mean, we could put it on and then see how things go that night. Mr. Wells?
Mr. Chair, just to reiterate, we do have $5 million committed if we build the animal shelter at the existing site, and 2 donors with no tax dollars from the town at all. I believe that you and I both know that all of the abutters, the 3 groups, Quistit, Pulte, and Indian Cliff neighbors, as well as the Governor Stoughton neighbors, are all going to strongly advocate next week that we pursue that. And I do agree. I still have 100 questions. I think this is not a feasible situation at all. It's not like we had $5 million for the access road site. That'd be a different issue. And if this were all town dollars that we were spending, we'd be looking at it differently than if there were not private dollars involved. So I think that we need to give these to truly listen to the residents, and I think it would be a slap in their face if we were to try and vote on this on the same night. If the rest of you felt that I will not, but if the rest of you felt that you want to go that way, I would suggest that you wait until Mr. Zoll returns from his honeymoon in October. Thank you.
So let me just, for the record, I don't presume to know what the neighbors are going to say with respect to the animal shelter project at those various sites. So I don't presume to know what they will say, and I certainly don't presume that there's any slap of the face, in considering a project that's been ongoing since 2015. So, Mr. Zoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just on this point of the other, the site, which is on the Poor Farm, my understanding, and I admittedly am the newest member to this board, is that land is actually under the purview of the trustees of the Governor Stoughton Trust, because it was left to the select board who makes up the trustees to determine how best to use that land for the benefit of the poor. And so it might actually be more fitting to include it. And I wonder if we have to have an opinion about the animal shelter land as the trustees, because that land is under the trust. And again, I'm just asking a question here, because I would say, if you asked me to put on my other hat as a trustee, I don't know that I would say that the animal shelter fulfills the mission of that will. And I'm unclear about whether the Attorney General would, because we've put into the Attorney General about the affordable housing idea on that site, did we include the animal shelter as part of that request, or would we have to go back to the Attorney General to ask permission for to create a new animal shelter on that site?
So
a whole host of questions are coming from the feedback.
So there is nothing currently in front of the Attorney General because it is up to a business plan, and my understanding is we're waiting on the advisory committee to update the business plan. So that's where that sits. If we're talking about construction, if we were to begin this month, if we were to get a contract this month and have an animal shelter a year from now, certainly to try to use the town farmland, it's fair to say that would add a considerable time, in my judgment, to the project. Ms. Bradley.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. So we did take it, and we the town and the animal league took it to the Attorney General's office, and the chair's right, they're looking for a business plan. Okay. I do not feel comfortable, knowing the information that I know, to vote on the Milton Animal League to help subsidize or basically pay for this project until I get a report from, I don't care if it's a CPA, I don't care if it's an auditor, I need some assurance from somebody that has a license that tells me that these accounts are okay. There has been a lot of talk about it in previous meetings before you were elected Ben, I'm sorry about that. I can,
I'm not sorry, I missed the
yeah, you can go back and watch them. But there's been a lot of talk about the way that the money has come in and the accounting of it. And so I just want to make sure that before we, as a town, take this step, I'm going to want to see that everything is A-OK and hunky-dory in Milton Animal League's finances. And I have said this now for months to a lot of people. And it is not only a protection for ourselves, but it's something that a smart business person would do. I am all in favor of moving this animal shelter forward, whether it be here, there, or anywhere. I don't care. I want it off the books. I have said that from the beginning. But I cannot, in good conscience, vote on something until I have all the information about their finances. Because we are basically entrusting that they will be able to handle all of this. And honestly, right now, I don't know that that's true. And so I'm not saying anything negative. I'm just saying, please show me, as any good business person would say, show me the money.
Mr. Wells.
So thank you. Just a follow-up to Mr. Zoll. So as Mr. Milano knows, Mr. McGettrick, counsel for the Animal League, has been conversing with both donors, and for full disclosure, I am a member of one of them, the Kaufman Foundation. As I've said many times before, this is a grant that we made long before I ever thought of being on this animal shelter. So to those who are exasperated about your time here, mine dealing with this issue predates it double that. Mm-hmm. So, but to the point Mrs. McGettrick has conveyed, and what has been stated to her, is that the interest in the Governor Stoughton land is not just to build it there, but would be to buy some of the land from the Governor Stoughton, answer an RFP, and any money answerable to an RFP from Governor Stoughton would go directly into the Governor Stoughton fund, just as the Pulte money did for the poor of Milton. So I don't want to belabor this, but that, and as to the final point to Mr. Zoll, believe me, the Attorney General and the 3 Attorney Generals prior are very familiar that the animal shelter sits there where it has been housed now for nearly 45 years. So thanks on that, Mr. Chair.
So I'll just say with respect to an RFP, I mean, currently the Governor Stoughton land is not for sale, but I guess it could be, but it's currently not for sale. So
I didn't say it was. I just said if you were to consider selling part of the land to build it there, Mr. McGettrick has been advised by the donors that they would in fact answer an RFP. And as you know, from how the whole Pulte neighborhood came to being, that was a sale, and that money went directly into the Governor Stoughton Fund, which we have used, and all, including every member of this board, is used to vote for, specifically using things like the Milton Food Pantry, Milton Residence Fund, which directly impact the poor Milton. And so, say if there were an RFP, I wasn't saying we did. I gave that as a possibility, not as a reality.
but we know in that hypothetical, they would add significant time, months if not years, to getting an animal shelter done. Mr. Wells, did you just leave your hand up? Do you have anything else?
No, I'm sorry.
All right, so I guess the question is, we expect to get a recommendation from the advisory committee tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to take this up, or at least have it, a potential of having it being heard on the 19th, and we can always defer it if we don't have, after the hearing, the Governor Stoughton hearing, and then we can always defer it if it gets too late, or if we decide we didn't. Is that something we want to do?
I think it'd be fine to put it on there, and if we felt like we didn't have enough time to deal with it, or we didn't have the information that we needed,
I just want that one piece of paper.
Yeah, we could kick it down the road.
Is that consensus? Or Ms. Musto didn't want to do that, but can we put it on? Is that rather than have a vote on it, can we just put it on and we can always make a decision at the time?
Are you going to put it, are you going to put it on for a discussion, or are you putting it on for a potential approval?
Well, I mean,
Because if you're going to put on for a potential discussion at the end of that meeting, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But if you're looking at an approval, I think that's more involved, because maybe you'd want, if it got to the point that they are looking at that, you'd want to have the project manager, and you'd want information.
Absolutely.
So if you're going to potentially leave it on as a potential discussion, if we have time. And I would say the caveat is if we have time. I don't want to rush any of these residents.
So what I would say, if we have a recommendation from the advisory committee, then we should make a decision on it. And we should have the project manager available for that kind of discussion. And so that would be my view. Mr. Wells.
Well, I don't think to the point of the audit, it's going to be more than one piece of paper, and I highly doubt that anything of that nature is going to be in our hands by next Tuesday.
Well, I guess we can find out. whether.
I think we would have had it already if it existed. It's
Well,
been asked for
maybe
on
you're
multiple
right.
occasions.
All right, so it sounds like Ms. Musto doesn't want to put on for discussion or approval. We can have a vote on that, or, oh, go ahead, sir.
I'm fine if you want to put on a discussion.
Okay.
I don't agree with an approval because, first of all, to have like, I don't want to rush the residents, first of all. Okay, this is they've requested this kind of a meeting. I don't think it's right to sort of rush them, right? So to add it on at the end of that kind of a meeting and make a decision, I don't agree with that piece of it. If we have time for a discussion, that's one thing, so, and a lot of times we put things on our agendas that just say discussion.
So just to be
So
clear.
that would be mine.
Yeah, just to be clear, the
Yeah.
Governor Stoughton meeting is a public hearing on the affordable housing plan. There's nothing to do with the animal shelter on the Governor Stoughton public hearing. Mr. Wells and then Mr. Zoll. And then Ms. Bradley.
So I would agree. I would not be inclined to be voting on this at all on Tuesday night. That's it.
All right, Mr. Zoll and then Ms. Bradley.
Yeah, I think just to, quick point on the rushing, I think, I appreciate what Ms. Musto is saying. I think you're talking about rushing the discussion around the affordable housing.
For the residents.
Right.
Yeah, the residents' discussion.
The town-wide residents, I think it's important that we acknowledge that this is town-wide land and we'll hear from everyone in town, not just certain neighborhoods. I do think, we, for example, have recently created a change in our bylaws where we allow 21 minutes of citizen speak. Tonight we had 3 minutes, less than. I don't expect that we'll have 3 minutes of citizen speak next week, but it's very possible that after an hour or an hour and a half, people may have felt like they've made their voices heard. So I think having it on the agenda, again, if we run out of time, I would not be in favor of telling everybody that they need to wrap it up because we have something else on the agenda. I don't think we would ever do something like that. But I think if we have it having it there allows us to do it. If we don't have it there, then we can't do it. So I'm in favor of giving us the ability to do something, including potentially vote on it.
Ms. Bradley.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I too am in favor of having something on Tuesday's agenda, including a vote. I am not going to beat the horse that's already dead, but I really, my thing is I want to make sure that there's somebody that's saying that everything is A-OK and copacetic with their funding. And this should be something that they can produce within a week. This is something that has been asked by me at least for the last, what month are we in now? September? At least for the last 9 months. So I have been asking for this documentation. If I receive it and somebody else with a license to tell me that they are A-OK, I'm ready to vote next Tuesday. I'm ready to get this moving. I'm ready to get it moving wherever we're going to move it to. But yes, let's get this rolling. Thank you very much.
All right, so under our policies, it's the province of the chair and the town administrator to set the agenda. My inclination is to set, we have at least 2 members saying that we should have it on for discussion approval. My inclination is to have it on for discussion approval. Doesn't mean we need to. Depends on the majority of the vote of the board. But that's my inclination, and we'll take it forward. I don't think it's really subject to a vote whether we have something on an agenda. It's just it's really the province of the chair, and then the board can do whatever it wants. The board can vote and do whatever it wants with the item. So anything further on this, item 6? All right. Item 7, discussion update approval, the December 4, 2023 special town meeting. We have 3 potential articles listed that we have heard about, and then a catch-all at the end for other potential articles. The first is the bylaw with respect to recording and posting meetings of elected bodies. Mr. Milano, do we have an update on that potential warrant article?
Sure. You've seen the draft that I put together. It has been sent. We've shared it with town council for their feedback. I've been sharing it around for other comments and feedback. Town clerk Susan Galvin has given me some comments. So once town council has a chance to review it, we'll bring it back to the select board. So I wouldn't view it as ready for further discussion at this point.
We have comments or questions?
I
Mrs.
just had
Bradley.
I had a quick question. I'm going to pull out my handy dandy old lady calendar. Okay, can we all just give me 1 second?
Planner.
It's a planner. So on the 26th of September, I have a note that says that we are to approve all the warrant articles. Is that still the correct date?
Yeah, that's the date we've set
Okay.
for closing the warrant and getting them to the warrant committee.
Okay, so we're still good if we don't have final things right now.
Correct.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right. Any other comments on the recording and posting item? Item B, the transfer of land to the Conservation Commission. Mr. Milano.
Sure. I've drafted this warrant article. I asked Peter McNulty at Murphy, Hesse, Toomey, and Lane to look at the land to confirm that this was all Article 97 land, and we would be just transferring it from Article 97 protection to Article 97 protection. That's all correct. So the warrant article is ready. If the select board is interested in having it on the December town meeting warrant, it is ready for that, subject to town council's further review of the legal language of the actual article.
Comments from Mr. Zoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I, along with several others, including Mr. Wells, had the pleasure of walking this land a couple of weeks ago with the Conservation Commission and others. I'm in favor of putting this through. This is really important land for a whole host of ecological and environmental reasons, from fish and wildlife perspectives, from carbon sequestration perspectives, from flooding and sort of climate management perspectives. So I would urge the board to approve this article for the town meeting, and I'm certain that the town meeting will be voting in favor of this as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
That's quite a prediction.
You never know.
With a steak dinner.
I
Really
can
don't.
only bet so many steak dinners on town meeting.
Other comments or questions on this? Do we want to take the action now, or do we want to?
So, Mr. Chair,
Mr. Wells.
I would make a motion to approve. Isn't this item 8?
It's
Same as what
item
Mr. Zoll was,
Seven.
item 8?
7B.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. No, you're correct now. You're right. So I'm going to make a motion to approve
Yep.
7B, transfer of land to the Conservation Commission. You can add it. I'm just reading off the agenda. If you have anything else you want to add to that, I'm fine
So
with that.
a friendly amendment?
On the amendment, yes.
Thank you so much. If you'd move to approve the bylaw to transfer the identified land to the Conservation Commission and request town council to review and put into proper legal form.
I'll accept that.
Thank you.
Motion's been made, friendly amendment accepted, and second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Ms. Musto?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Zoll?
Yes.
Mr. Zulish, yes. All right, so we have that one. And then item C is the local historic district bylaw. I will say that based on our discussion at our last meeting, I contacted the chair of the planning board and sent all the materials on this bylaw to the planning board, to the chair of the planning board, made her aware of the discussion here, that there was conjecture that it may be significant burden for the planning board on top of the MBTA Communities Act to have this. And the chair of the planning board told me that she was going to take this up with her board on Thursday night.
Oh, this Thursday.
I believe this Thursday, because it was last week that we were in touch. And Ms. Milano, I don't know if you have anything further on this bylaw.
No, that's my understanding that it's been included on their agenda and they plan to begin discussing it. I had a phone call with Larry Loffer from the Local Historic District Study Committee today, and he's planning to be there as necessary.
All right.
So, Mr. Chair, can I ask a
Yeah.
procedural question? So if the planning board is going to take it up, it has to, does it still have to come back to us by the 26th to approve it for the
So-
warrant?
So
I
yes.
just
So
want to
the-
make sure I'm
yeah,
clear.
So the reason that I reached out to the planning board is that this bylaw needs to be reviewed by the planning board, and in addition, the local historic district needs to conduct a public hearing. So, so the question is, do we want, so we are asking the planning board if they'll have the bandwidth really to do
Right.
this, given everything else they have to do. So we would have to take an action at a subsequent meeting next Tuesday, the 26th,
Okay.
whatever, to include this on the warrant.
But everything is closing on the 26th.
It closes on the 26th. However,
then we
it's
get some
not-
leeway,
it is
right?
It's not uncommon,
I just-
uncommon for the warrant to be reopened.
Okay.
The 26th is the date that we telegraph to the world as the time that we intend to close the warrant. It is not uncommon or atypical for the warrant to be reopened
Okay.
and to include articles.
Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Chair,
Mr. Zoll.
is your recommendation then that we stand pat on this and see what the planning board comes back
That's,
with on
that's
on
my
Thursday?
view, yeah. that's
Should
my
we
view.
include this as a potential, if we're going to have a little appendix meeting at the end of, no, all right, never mind.
I say no because I think that meeting is going to be long enough
On the 19th.
on the 19th. Don't you think?
It's just, if this was an up or down, I would
Oh.
think that, we could
Will they
do
be
it, but
ready by then?
What's that?
I don't know that the planning board will be ready by then, will they?
So, the ask of the chair of the planning board was, not that they have their, review the article, but they tell us whether they will have the bandwidth in the next 3 months.
Now I
So then we
understand.
could send it to them.
Now I
Sorry
understand.
for the-
Thank you
sorry-
so
sorry-
much.
Sorry for not being clear.
Then yes.
So it's just, so the idea
thought
is, the request of the planning board was just, do you think you'll have the opportunity to review this? Not will they review it by next?
So if they come back and tell us, Mr. Chair, that they think that they'll have that opportunity, then we could say,
Then we
okay,
could put it
then
on
we
the
could
warrant.
just put it
Then we
over
put it on the
there.
warrant, Yeah.
So if it's an easy thing to tack onto the end of next week, we could do it then. Or we could do it on the 26th,
Okay,
next week.
all right. All right. And then we have a catch-all for any other potential articles. Are we aware of anything? Oh, Mr. Milano, is there anything on the finance side?
Sure, I do anticipate that we will, I'll be bringing a proposed warrant article to the Select Board Finance Committee and then to the Select Board for potential additional appropriations for the December town meeting. Last year, if you'll recall, we did make an appropriation at the December town meeting to increase the amount of money going into the fiscal 23 reserve fund. Right now, we're thinking along the same tracks. And in a related topic, the Capital Improvement Planning Committee voted this morning to support the purchase of a new wood chipper for the town. The DPW's wood chipper engine failed earlier this week, or I'm sorry, late last month. And this is a piece of equipment that's used daily, and the cost to bring in a crew can run up to $1,500 to $3,000 a day. And while we do have a backup, it's about 20 years old, and we all know our winter storms can be tough. There's a hurricane lurking out in the ocean, so not having a piece of equipment until the next fiscal year is not really going to work for our needs. So we would likely draw down some of that reserve fund already to acquire this piece of equipment. So our goal at the December town meeting would be to at least replenish that, if not increase it. And then I haven't been advised of any other requests so far for additional funding, although we may get some in the next couple of weeks. I have reached out to the superintendent, to Glenn, today, just to ask if there's anything critical or urgent that came up, just to see if they had anything. And then we'll reconvene with the Select Board Finance Committee and bring it to the Select Board as well.
And I just observed you may get a request tomorrow from the Animal Shelter Advisory Committee to bridge the gap, if there is a gap still. Ms. Bradley?
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to make note again, Mr. Milano, that we need to keep in mind that Mr. Zoll will be out of the country for a while. So if we could make that
Thank you.
happen on a sooner rather than later, that would be amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anything else on town meeting, special town meeting articles? All right, item 8. I believe this is the letter of support for the CPC on the estuary project. I believe this is a deferral. Mr. Doyle is unavailable, and I think the letter is not in letter form, so I think the request is to defer this. And then item 9 is the follow-up discussion on the Select Board Landing Committee Neponset River tour. What's the update on that? Mr. Wells or Mr. Milano?
So, Mr. Chair, I'm out of state. I'm not back until the 27th. I was going to try to schedule for the end of that week. Mr. Zola's intended. He wants to go, and when are you back? When is he back?
I'm back on that. Essentially, my first full day back in country will be October 3rd. But you don't schedule totally around me. I'll be there in
Or
spirit.
boxed up. So the one
I don't leave
logistical
until-
issue we have is that October 1st the bridge closes for the year, and then we can't get in or out anyway. So
I don't leave until I'm available until the 22nd, essentially, Mr. Wells.
I'm gone. I'm not back until that's the problem. So let's see. It may be that we would not need any money, and I'd do this on 2 smaller municipal boats as we did the initial. Just do it as a quick follow-up, and then have a public thing down at the for anyone else who's interested, just down at the landing site to go through the tie-in bond report. And if that's the case, we wouldn't need any money at all. So for right now, let's put that on the back burner as far as any money requests. And we're meeting on Thursday, and I'll have a better idea after Thursday.
Comments
The
or
landing
questions?
committee is.
Comments or questions from the board? Ms. Bradley.
Thanks so much, Mr. Chair. So I'm wondering, Mr. Wells, if it's possible for you to come back and talk to us about what the plan is, like I don't know what the overall and arching plan is besides what I've heard regarding some executive committee meetings and the leases that we've been discussing in executive committee. I'm kind of coming at it from a place where I don't really know what's happening down there. I had the opportunity to pop by. I literally popped by on Friday night. I got to see a lot of people down there, a lot of folks, and did some talking. It was great. I was really inspired by some things that they all were willing to do to work together. And so I guess I'm coming at this with I don't understand. And it's because I wasn't here for the previous dredging. I knew about it because I was on the warrant committee, but I wasn't here.
No, you weren't. The last dredging was in 1983.
Oh, then no, I wasn't. I was 9.
None of us were here the last time it was dredged. And I was lucky that I even found Bill Clark, the former town planner, found the dredging history of permits going back to 1909, and that was just a stroke of luck in a safe.
So I think just in terms of process, if there's municipal resources being used in this, then it needs to be something that is either within the purview of the town administrator and approved by the town administrator, or within this board's purview and approved by this board, and not by either the landing committee that doesn't have the authority to do this, or one member of this board. So it seems to me it's either got to be this board or the town administrator knowing what this is going to be and approving it.
So a little bit of history. I'm trying to give this a 5-minute answer. The landing committee was founded, was created after the work of the MPIC, and the multiple recommendations of the MAPC, the MPIC, and the planning board to the select board. We created the select board landing committee when it was created in 2019. I actually thought it'd be about 6 meetings. What we found out initially was that all of the rents collected by the yacht club for at least 10 or 12 years, no one had any idea where that money went or what it was spent on. None of the programs that the yacht club are outlined in the yacht club's lease to provide to the town were ever provided, including all types of youth programs that's in there. Additionally, we found out that the land that as Mr. Zulus will recall, that the land that the boats were all stored in was not even owned by the town. It was in fact owned by 88 Walk. So the first issue of the landing committee was to A, create and was passed and voted by this board, a town bylaw that created a revolving fund for all monies now collected from the landing or the waterfront to go into that, including rents, to go into that rotating committee. The second thing that we realized was that the town dock, which is supposed to be licensed under Chapter 91 of the Commonwealth, had no license. It had not been licensed in 30 years. The town filed with the town planner and our committee, we filed with Mr. Clark for that license. The Milton Yacht Club challenged our ownership. We went to court, and we prevailed in that case, and the courts ruled that the docks were in fact the town's. The last thing and the most recent, which came just before Ms. Bradley and Ms. Musto came, that Mr. Zulus was part of, and Ms. Conlon, Mr. Doyle, and Mrs. Collins, was that we procured and bought, with town meeting approval, the land now known as 41 Wharf, which is now owned by the town and is broken into 3 lots, Lot A, Lot B, and Lot C. All of this has come back before the board to include the first river tour was done. We advised the board. I didn't ask for approval, and I looked, it wasn't approved. You didn't ask for approval, nor did the prior chair. We did that because no one, and I mean not a soul, include the Conservation Commission, anyone, had paid any attention to this valuable piece of 2-mile stretch of land in decades. And from that, the Seaport Council of the Commonwealth listened to our plea and gave a $50,000 grant to Ty and Bond to conduct an entire study of that river from the Milton Landing to the Squantum Point Park in Quincy. And it was from that study that they learned not only that the dredging need and the dredging history, and we have not dredged since 1983, that the entire length of the river and any pollution found in it is a direct result of the EPA pollution that is now on the EPA Superfund list, that now goes all the way up to High Park. And it is inherent upon us, and I don't mean like a little bit, it is inherently our responsibility in the city of Boston, in the city of Quincy, for their pieces of it, to clean up this contaminated, beautiful place of land. As Mr. Zoll saw on the walking tour, because I've done it a million times, it is polluted, and it is our responsibility to clean it. So that's what we have done. As to whether or not on leases, and I'm not going to get into that, as Mr. Milano knows, and he inherited from Mrs. Fagan and from Mr. Denny, we have spent hours. We have put out 2 and now potentially 3 different RFPs representing the town, the interests of the waterfront, the interests of the citizens, each and every time. And the existing leases that we voted last week, the initial lease, Ms. Bradley, that was put out, the assessors requested in 2019, that the building that we just gave a lease for $2,500 for, the minimum annual rent for that building be $25,000 a year. Our committee recommended to this board that it be $2,500 based on only on the historical component that the Milton Yacht Club had been in that building for 100 years. And that's pretty much all I can say about as to where we are right now.
And that, I don't think any of that disagrees with the fact that this is an advisory committee of the board, and as a matter of process, it's up to this board or the town administrator and under his authority to take any actions, whether it be to spend any money or to do anything on behalf of the town. So I don't think
every single dollar that we've spent to include the fencing that so many have asked for, the new black fencing, which was completed on Friday, a huge safety improvement to the amount of $9,600. The bid at the committee request sought by the DPW, and the bill sent to the town administrator as soon as it was received last week. A huge improvement to that waterfront has just been done this week.
All right,
and no one's disputing that, and every dollar was spent. We haven't had many. There aren't a lot of municipal dollars that were spent. Mr. Milano may recall, but not a lot.
So we're
the
getting
bigger
a little.
monies that were spent will be this year, which is he's just awarded. I think it's the engineering for phase 1 of the repairs to the yacht club building, which come to the amount of $200,000. That's a huge gift, huge gift. And not that it isn't needed, but everything we've done this has been countless hours, Michael. I can't even comprehend how many hours we put into this.
So I think we're
For
getting
something that the town has neglected for decades.
So I think we're getting a little far afield of the agenda item, and to the extent we need to talk about fencing or anything, we can put that on another agenda item. Do we have anything further on a Neponset River tour for approval of
We
this
do
board?
not.
So
No.
we're not asking for any money.
We don't
For
know
any-
when it's going to be.
Okay, so we don't know what's going
We
to
don't, we're not, I don't
So
know. I don't know
I
that
think
there's
we
an
can
ask
move
for
along.
anything.
Yeah, we can move along then.
I would like to go whenever it is. I know, I don't know where it is.
Presumably, we will either approve it or Mr. Milano will approve it, so you'll
Can
know
somebody
about
let
it.
me know?
When
Thanks.
it's approved, we'll know.
Ms. Musto.
I was going to suggest that Mr. Milano could be the one to approve it. He sits on that committee. He's at those committee meetings. And if these are costs that are, we had approved that you could approve up to so many dollars. So, I mean, not that this would be a huge cost, but it just seems when and if it ends up being a more formalized process. But he's at those meetings.
Yeah, the question is whether who has the authority to appropriate money from that revolving fund, if that's where the money's coming from. And if it's this board, then it has to come to this board.
Right.
So that's the question. So,
So,
all right.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah,
can
Ms.
I ask you,
Bradley.
I know later on we have a agenda item called future agenda items. It's number 20. But I'm just wondering if we can put maybe in a pin in it to bring back up is who does approve the funds for items that are happening. I can tell you that Mr. Zoll and I have not seen anything that came before us for a fence. I saw the fence, I was there. So I'm wondering, are these things that we can ask for future agenda items, or are these
Yeah.
things that the finance committee should ask? I don't know what the
No,
process
I
is.
mean, we can put it on, we can put it on.
We
as-
can do
as an
something like
agenda
that.
item.
Okay.
We can certainly put it on as agenda items.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Wells.
I have my hand up. I know you don't see it. So
Yeah, no,
I
I
do
see it.
believe, and Mr. Milano can answer me, I believe that the article was written in a way that any funds go to the town administrator, which is what this bill was, which is exactly what we did.
On which piece?
We're getting far afield of the agenda item, so we'll put this on the agenda and figure it out. It's not part of the agenda, so let's,
Okay.
we'll take this up on another, we really, town council's not here, but we really can't go too far afield of the agenda item. So anything else on the river tour? All right, item 10, request for proposals for Milton Landing Lot B. Is this Mr. Milano or Mr. Wells?
This is me.
Oh, Mr. Wells.
So we have a landing meeting on Thursday. What I can report to the board is that and I met with Mr. Milano on Thursday of last week to fill him in. We've received an inquiry from a organization, a water usage organization that is interested or they're actually interested in the building and Lot B. We've just awarded a lease on the building, but they're interested in Lot B for seasonal use. We have a meeting Thursday to look at the prior RFP for Lot B and to develop a new RFP for Lot B to bring back to the board. I don't think it would be by the 27th. It could be. I know that Josh and Tim are working on it already. They've already pulled it out. But if it's not the 20th, I'm saying the 27th, and I might have the date wrong. I know whatever that week is, whatever the date, 26th, I think you said. It would be the first meeting in October to issue an RFP, a new RFP for Lot B.
Comments or questions? Or updates? All right. So thank you for that. So we'll look for that at a subsequent meeting. Item 11, Select Board Finance Committee Report. Ms. Bradley.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Zoll and I had the opportunity to meet with first of all, we met and we organized. Thank you so much for that. And then we met with the school finance committee, which we intend to do the same thing that we did last year, which was make sure that we are creating a town-wide budget It's not the schools, it's not the town, it is one budget under which the town administrator and we all observed. So it was a great meeting. Everybody was present. We got to hear a lot of what their agenda items are for the school, what their goals are for the school, and how they are planning on moving forward. It was more of an organizational meeting where we talked about starting our every school subcommittee, finance committee, every other week, starting in October. So we will continue that, and we talked a lot about dates of when they can get us information so that we can try and be more cognizant of the warrant committee's time and how much it takes for them to do things. So that was pretty much the sum of it. Mr. Zoll, if I missed anything? Okay, that was it. So we are off and running. Giddy up.
Comments or questions on item 11? Seeing none. Item 12, discussion approval committee appointments and reappointments. We have 4 listed appointments for the Equity and Justice for All Committee. Mr. Milano, is there any input on this in terms of teeing this up? Are these, do we have 4 slots open?
We do, and we did share the applicant's name and information with Ms. Lattimore and Mr. Hart, and they took a look at them and said they'd be good to have onto the committee. So they're for the select board now.
Mr. Chair,
Ms.
I'd like to make
Gazal.
a motion to appoint Kevin McElhaney, Yolanda Thomas, Sarah Porter, and Sarah Myrie to the Equity and Justice for All Advisory Committee.
For a term?
For a term of,
Is it right there?
Hold on, I got it.
It's usually 1 year.
yeah, for a term, a 1-year term.
Thank you. Sorry.
Oh, second, sorry.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All right, Ms. Musto stepped out. Do we want to wait a minute or?
She has, she's just coughing.
Okay, we'll give her a second.
We should give her a second.
Give her a second. TV should have some music they're able to play along with. I think they do, actually. Yeah, take your
Sorry.
time. Take your time.
I'll turn them off.
Oh, do you want to turn them off, the fans?
It's okay, it was just irritating.
Yeah.
It's all right.
Yeah, why don't we turn them off?
I will, I will.
Now
Do the roll call vote.
All right, we'll do the roll call
I'll
vote.
turn them off. I'm lower on the roll.
Well, no, but you need to
No,
vote
but just
too.
sit, Well, I'll do it in a second.
I'm
All
good
right.
now.
All right, well, we'll turn them off. We'll turn them
Okay.
off. We'll do the vote and then we'll turn
We
them off.
vote?
All right, yes. Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Ms. Musto?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Zoll?
Yes.
And Mr. Zoll is yes. Okay. Item 13 is discussion approval of the minutes of August 8th, 2023. We had some revisions that came in today. And comments or questions on the minutes?
No, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes for August 8th, 2023.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. I have two comments. One is under item 9, where it said the chair thanked Mr. Zoll for his efforts and offers his support in favor of the revisions. I believe I said, and this may have been, and I suggest this only because there are other things that are stated in here about what members stated. I believe I said that the revisions did not, in my view, the revisions did not change the substance of the request or the arguments. But I haven't gone back and checked the meeting, and so so I would ask, I guess I would ask maybe Ms. DiNapoli to check her notes to see if that's accurate.
Mr. Zulus, that's my recollection
Mine
of it as
too.
well, and maybe I'll, if somebody wanted to amend my motion to amend the minutes.
Well, and then there's one other thing, one other question I had, and that is, this is the proposed revisions at the bottom of page 9 on the reconsideration of the June 13th minutes. It said, Ms. Musto shared concerns that the minutes did not paint a clear picture. And then Ms. Musto requested Ms. Bradley elaborate on what occurred during the meeting. And again, I don't remember this discussion specifically. This is statements going back and forth. But it's really the board. I don't know if there was a motion here or there wasn't a motion here. So this is accurate. This is
There was no motion.
For the
okay.
discussion.
Just the discussion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Fair enough.
I read it. It's fine.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
Thank you.
All right. So I guess I would offer that amendment.
I accept it as a
Okay.
friendly amendment.
All right. Motions. So the friendly amendment has been offered, and does the second accept it as well?
Sure.
Okay. Motion's been made and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Ms. Musto?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Zoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Zulish, yes. Item 14 is the discussion approval of one-day liquor licenses.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Ms. Bradley.
Thank you. I move to approve the one-day liquor license for the Forbes House Museum located at 215 Adams Street, Barnfest, September 21st. Oh, my dad's birthday. Maybe I'll take him. 2023 from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Ms. Musto?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Zoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Zulish, yes.
Mr. Chair, if I could,
Please.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the one-day liquor license for Deborah Merriam, the Mary May Binney Wakefield Arboretum, October Family Fest, October 21st, 2023, from 2 to 5 p.m.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Ms. Musto?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Zoll?
Yes.
Mr. Zulish, yes. Item 15, this was a simple idea that seems to have been, got caught up in some of the intricacies of municipal finance. The idea was to have a food truck for our town staff and to maybe have on a Friday afternoon when they get done at 12 to have town staff and elected officials get together and share some goodwill and some food and drink. However, we have some issues with municipal, and the idea was to get an appropriation from the select board budget to do this, approximately up to $900 or $1,000. However, we have come to find out that this is not allowed under municipal finance. And Mr. Milano, maybe you can fill us in on this.
Correct, Mr. Chair. There's very strict guidance from the Department of Revenue about expenditures like this, and it really limits our ability to support and have events for retirees and stuff along those lines. So we generally will fund those out of our own pocket. I will just add that we have made some progress on potential gift funds, so I might be able to come back to you next week with a proposal for this one.
Okay.
Can I ask a
Ms.
question?
Bradley and then Mr. Zoll.
Thanks so much. So I'm trying to phrase this the right way. So we have at the church right next door, like this weekend, we're having grills out there and we're going to do a welcome thing. Is it something that other nonprofits within the town could help put on, or is this, what do the guidelines say in regards to other people stepping up to help out?
Expenditure of public money.
Yeah, this is public. If we were going to do it,
Right, so
select
like,
board were
if
gonna
we
do
were to
it
bring
out
our
of-
grills,
Yeah, that's just separate. What the thought was with the select board would do it perhaps out of its funds. That's not allowed.
okay.
At least unless we have something with a gift fund. If people want to do something separately and do it on our own, that's certainly permissible,
okay.
it seems
Yeah,
to me.
and I would be happy to follow up with you on that.
Yeah, I mean, there's an infrastructure there that I think
Sure.
we can utilize.
That was my point, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Was that I would be willing to contribute to. I'm sure others would be as well. So, maybe Mr. Milano can let us know if there's some gift funds that are available, and if there's other funds that we could potentially use, and what we could supplement with.
Mr. Wells?
So you're correct that I'm very familiar with this. You cannot use municipal dollars at all. I did do this a couple of years ago. You might remember I had brought in an ice cream truck for the day. I paid for it myself. That's what we would have to do. We could all collectively chip in to pay for it. An outside entity could pay for it. any restaurant in town could offer it. My only suggestion is I don't think I'd pick a Friday because the reason they like a half a day is they want out of here. As Mr. Milano knows, when the bell rings, they head south. So,
So a Thursday.
but I'd be more than willing to put whatever dollars necessary towards this. The only thing is we want to do it sooner versus later as the fall is coming upon us and the weather will change at any time.
Same.
Exactly, yep, exactly. That was the idea. Okay, all right, so we'll see if we can make that happen in the next 2 weeks before Mr. Zoll goes away. And
I'm causing all these problems.
no, not at all. All right, item 16 is the town administrator's report.
Thank you. I feel like I forgot to prepare for that tonight. So I don't have much. I will note that the town moderator, town clerk, and I have had a conversation about communications with town meeting members. We looked at what other representative town meeting communities do and what kind of setup there is to allow folks, if they want to communicate with their elected officials in different precincts, what they do. The town of Needham has a system where town meeting members are asked to provide their information, and then their information is held by the town, and residents are allowed to contact them through a form on the town website. So we've been looking at that model closely. The town clerk has had a conversation with the town clerk in Needham, and I know Mr. Hiss was reaching out to the town moderator in Needham as well. So we're underway looking at something that might be of interest to this board and to the town meeting members, and I'll report back once we have a little bit more information in terms of how Needham's has been working and doing so far.
All right.
Are we allowed to ask questions?
Yes, go ahead. Just keep it.
Yeah,
keep it
so
tight.
Mr. Milano, thank you for that. I know, with the December town meeting approaching, I know there's a lot of folks who want to make sure that they can get in touch with their town meeting members. So I think I'm glad to hear that this is happening. And I would try to put that out there as it would be great if we could have something in place for that.
Sure.
Because I think transparency and the idea of a representative government is that you hear from your constituents and you act accordingly. So I'm glad that we're looking into this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, all right, Ms. Musto, all right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that right now, people can still reach their town meeting members. They have their addresses. I often get letters and things from people. So there is a mechanism now in the interim, so.
Great. All right.
The other thing, if I could,
Mr.
Mr. Chair,
Milano, yes,
is
please. It's your report.
we do routinely post openings for boards and committees on our website. Please check that out. It's been a little quiet lately, so we'll probably do a new blast in the coming weeks to try to get some interest now that folks are back and back to the regular routine of school and volunteering for boards and committees.
Great, great. Anything else, Mr. Milano?
That is my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 17, Chair's report. Two things. One, the first home football game, as I've been alerted by Mr. Zoll, is Thursday night, and that is the Milton Glows Gold football game. And so if we want to all get out and support the Milton Glows Gold, for which we issued a proclamation, then we should show up and do our best to show up at the football game on Thursday evening.
7 o'clock kickoff.
7 o'clock kickoff. 7 o'clock kickoff. And then second also relates in part to Mr. Zoll, and that is that there was a very successful Porch Fest this past weekend, at which I became as wet as I have been in many decades. But it was a very successful event, and a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of music, a lot of fun, and a lot of rain. So, thank you to all who participated, and all who went, and all who got wet. Item 8. Oh, Mrs. Musto.
Yes, I just wanted to add one thing. That was last night I attended the library, had a State of the Library presentation that was for us. And it was very informative. I was the only representative from our board that went, but it was really informative, and I know that he'll send out the PowerPoint I guess there was some concern about us not receiving it early enough so we could plan accordingly, so just wanted to
Great,
pass
no,
that
that's
out.
very helpful, thank you.
I was getting wet at a soccer game, so thank you.
All right, public comment response, anything on that? Item 19, future meeting dates. We have Mr. Zoll, you're just itching your head? You don't
Yeah,
know.
no,
Okay,
sorry,
yeah,
just
all right.
scratching, throwing
Item
you off.
19 is future meeting dates. We have our public hearing on Governor Stoughton Trust next Tuesday, and then the other dates listed. Future agenda items, we have the, and what was it that you wanted us to put a
The
pin on?
fence.
I would like
The-
to know who approves monies to be spent on Milton Landing.
Okay,
So that's one. I got a list.
okay, that's the revolving fund, okay?
Yes.
All right. You can send this to me in an email.
I
We don't have-
could.
If you want.
I
or
could,
we
but
can do it-
it's,
If you want to do it now,
I would like
that's
to do
fine,
this
too.
now.
All right.
So I'd also like an update on where we are with the turf field. The soccer team has had to cancel, the JV and the freshman teams have had to cancel multiple games
This is Lower Guile.
Yes.
this week.
yeah.
Well, yes, and so I'd like to know where we're at with the turf field and when that can happen, because it is impacting our children. And then I'm questioning, and I'm wondering, and please, those of you that have been on here longer than me, do we often get reports from the subcommittees that we oversee, or do they do their own thing? I didn't know where else to ask this,
So why don't we put it on for an agenda item?
Thank you so much.
Reports from subcommittees.
and that's it, I'm done.
Great. So that's 3.
3, I got 3.
All right. That's not bad. Anything else on future agenda items? Item 21 is the executive session that we've been advised by town council to defer because in order to have an executive session with respect to potential litigation, it needs to be imminent. Given the fact that the Chickatawbit project has now been delayed, we need to take a look at whether anything that we were discussing would be imminent. And town council will advise us on that. So we'll have to defer on item 21. Item 22.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, Ms. Bradley,
Yes.
Ms. Musto,
Yes.
Mr. Wells,
Yes.
Mr. Zoll?
Yes.
And Mr. Zulish, yes. Thank you, everyone. We will return next Tuesday night on September 19th for our Governor Stoughton public hearing with respect to the land at the town farm. Thank you all, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.
We're still on. So, oh, there we go.